Right, hello, greetings. It's Dr. Thomas Daffern here for my weekly talk. Time flies, doesn't it? Here we are. And it's August the 9th today, 2020, so I'm giving a talk, my usual fasting Sunday, to, just to have a day of thinking, reflection, musing, meditation, and then teaching, in effect, my little broadcasts here, which have been going on for, a year and a half now. The thing that triggered it, as you probably know, was my abhorrence of the Brexit, phenomenon, the way that my country and the UK has been hijacked by irrational and ignorant forces, in my opinion. And I'm not, this isn't an accusation against individuals. I know I have friends who voted for Brexit and believed in it, but I do believe they're profoundly mistaken, and I think it's a catastrophe which I'm watching in slow motion like a train wreck. So I've spoken about that many times. I will come to that right at the end of this talk. But first I want to sort of navigate a bit like Odysseus through the islands and see what we see. The first thing I want to talk about is the World Intellectual Forum, which I'm coordinator for in Europe. There's a body of us. Why do we need a World Intellectual Forum? Well, if not now, when? I mean, what is intellect? Well, in the Arabic it's aql, which is the ability to receive divine knowledge, gnosis. The Quran is full of verses, and I'm doing a detailed commentary on it, about God is there, full of signs. The creation is full of signs for those that have knowledge, that have aql, that can understand. If you don't have aql, if you haven't awakened your higher reason, then the world's meaningless. The world is a joke. The world is a bad joke by some devil figure, and you get lost in a sort of darkness. And so aql is incredibly important. It's a divine faculty which we humans have through divine grace, which gives us the capacity to know the mysteries behind things. Not just, like, oh, I'm wearing a white thing. No, not perception only, but then to rationally investigate behind things, behind appearances, to the realm of mystery. That's what aql does. It gives you the aspirational capacity to pierce the veil and see behind the throne of the mysteries, to use Sufi terminology. So it's incredibly important. Now, it's not only Muslims that have aql. Of course, it's a human, universal faculty that's within us all. And ratio, reason, which is where our word comes from, in Cicero, is again a divine ray from the Creator, Deus, who gives to each human in our souls this ratio, this capacity to reason, which doesn't mean just to sort of think rationally, but to think really, really deeply, and to go profoundly into the mysteries. Now, when European philosophers and intellectuals went down to Cordoba and studied at the feet of Islamic sages and got from them translations of Aristotle from Latin, from Arabic, which they then translated into Latin, and Anglo-Saxons used to go, and French, and it was the pilgrimage place. It was like going to California in the 60s. Everyone had to go to Cordoba. And there they met people like Ibn Rushd. They met great Jewish sages like Maimonides. They met, if they were lucky, the great Sufi Ibn Arabi. I mean, these were towering giants of intellect in the divine sense. And that's where European intellectual life comes from. That's where the translations of Aristotle reawakened the mind of Europe that had been slumbering during the Dark Ages. And in the person of people like Abelard, we reawakened the university system in Paris, in Bologna, in Oxford, and scholars, were amazed at look, Aristotle said it all then. There's this thing called nous, intellect. That's the divine mover of movers. And it's there in every animal. It's there in the telos of every plant and flower and animal. They had a wonderful book called De Plantis, which was, they thought, by Aristotle, Actually, it turns out it was by Nicholas of Damascus, but in Oxford in the first few decades, they had this text in Latin, as if by Aristotle, about plants and how they also share this telos, this divine intelligence, this divine mind. Nicholas of Damascus, by the way, was a very interesting character who wrote a biography of Augustus. He was a teacher of Herod the Great. He met embassies coming from India. He was, again, an intellectual polymath in his era, which was the time of Christ. I mean, it would make a great novel, Nicholas of Damascus, his meeting with Christ and his recollections. It would have been just at the end of his life. And he was a polymathic Aristotelian who loved plants and, and the Arabs had his works, which they translated. They thought they were by Aristotle, which is how they end up in Oxford in the 1200s. That's an example of intellectual borrowing, sharing, networking. This is before they had the internet. Scholars actually had to go in person, riding on horseback or whatever, or sometimes just walking, to each other's universities and visiting and so on. Well, that's what they did. So, okay, fast forward 2020, that's what we're trying to do now. That's what World Intellectual Forum is, only now it's easier with the internet and, social media and YouTube and all that. But the work we have to put in is as intense. This is not a free ride for, the Wikipedia generation, just click and then they get knowledge. No, it's in-depth reflection on the human condition and where we're at. I want to mention one recent work by Thomas Piketty, who is a great intellectual here in France, which seems to be a haven for intellectuals, and has been for several hundred years, arguably ever since Abelard founded the university in Paris. And this book, Capital and Ideology, is his latest study of how capitalism functions behind the scenes and how it... You see, I would go one step further. I've sort of written the next volume. Piketty hasn't written it yet. About how capital invests in ideological warfare because it wants to create conflict so that it can then sell weapons, so it can then make profits. I mean, warfare is the biggest racket that capitalism has been doing since the invention of the bow and arrow, I would say. And if you look back at the history of Sumerian states, they were always often tragically in conflict with each other. And, the warlords are the capitalists of the ancient world, be it Caesar or, the Roman Empire was warlordism, as these rival armies used to fight it out. The Christianisation that was supposed to bring peace only succeeded partially because Constantine was just another warlord, and he adapted a version of Christianity that he could turn into warlordism. And so it didn't stop the military capitalism that the whole thing depends on. And it hasn't stopped it in European history hitherto, which is why the European Union is so important, because that is an attempt to stop international warlordism, getting away with murder like World War I, World War II. These were knee-deep in blood, genocide, Holocaust, massacres, Operation Barbarossa, mass rapes in Berlin. I mean, all sides were as bad as each other, and were playing, dancing to the tune of warlord militarist capitalism, really. Even if they had a sort of a gloss of we're the good guys trying to change the system, they were actually involved in it. And the British actually were doing the same with their mass destructions of Dresden and Hamburg, and these were war crimes also. So at the end of World War II, we European nations came together gradually and said, look, we actually want to play a new game now. We want to play a peace game. And they signed up. Unfortunately, what we've had with Brexit is the military capitalist game players, the guys that invent these war games, decided Brexit would be a great thing because it will destabilise that European peace settlement. It will put on the agenda again nationalist warfare. It'll create militarism, round three, and with any luck, we'll have a World War III. And they can really make profits, Well, I mean, as a philosopher for peace in Europe, I'm exposing these gangsters, which is effectively what they are. And I point the finger of blame at people like Philip May, the husband of Theresa May, who sold weapons to Saudi Arabia to drop on innocent people in Yemen. This is disgusting and absolutely obscene. And the fact that these people are then promoted to the House of Lords shows to me the shallowness and putrid corruption in the UK political system. The Queen seems unable to actually function as a proper ethical guardian anymore. And the system is totally broken down. It's become a putrid, corrupt haven of liars and scoundrels who are benefiting from military capitalism. And the only solution for it is a complete overhaul of the UK constitution. But we'll see. It's going to be challenging to get there from here. I suspect Scottish independence will have to happen before we get there. And the English will fight tooth and nail to prevent it. I think the Scots have enough strength of will and purpose and intelligence to insist. We shall see. And the people of Northern Ireland as well. We've commemorated the death of John Hume this week in Ireland, a Catholic from Derry, a great man who won the Nobel Peace Prize, I think with David Trimble, for his role in the Good Friday Agreement, which brought the peace settlement to Northern Ireland, finally. The cavalier way with which the people in the Conservative Party have ignored that, as if it never happened, and their understanding of history is like skin deep. And I mean, people like Priti Patel and these kind of people, they literally haven't got a clue about Irish history or how important that Good Friday Agreement was and how important it is to safeguard it. And the Conservative Party has just a complete ignorance when it comes to the affairs of Ireland. I speak as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland. I'm part Irish and I've travelled there often. And I know the history of Ireland, pretty well. And I know how important that Good Friday Agreement was. I played a small part, behind the scenes. I was organising meetings in Parliament on peace and ethics. I was going to Irish academic conferences with both Catholic, Protestant and Druid and, the whole panoply of Irish culture. And we worked finally towards a sort of peace settlement. Now, that's all been jeopardised and thrown in under the fast approaching train of destiny. People in Northern Ireland, by the Good Friday Agreement, are allowed a referendum, and they have to vote for union with the Republic. If I was in Northern Ireland given that choice, I can't see any other solution to get the English to actually wake up to what they've done with Brexit. The Irish should go it alone, and Ireland would become a great power if it could join the North and the South in one nation. A great power for good is what I mean. They've just signed, the Irish Republican government has just signed the non-nuclear weapons protocol, the statement for signature. And I would love to see Northern Ireland rejoin them and that the whole country becomes nuclear weapon free. It would shame the English and the Welsh, who ought to know better than having voted for Brexit. The Welsh have a long history of European interconnectedness. The Tudor dynasty came about because their founder came to France and fell in love with the Queen of France, who was Henry V's widow, the Welsh are a European nation as well, and I lived in Wales for 10 years. I love Wales. And here in Gaul, the Celtic part of France and Brittany, they speak Old Brittonic, a form of Welsh. The Celts were European people, pan-European, as I've explained in my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies. So it's not a little thing, this Druid thing. It's a pan-European wisdom lineage which is still going and still strong. And that's yet another, it's the 99th reason why I oppose Brexit, is from a pan-European Druid perspective. What else is happening in Europe? Well, the World Intellectual Forum, we're doing our best to flag up difficulties. I've just published a newsletter for the European branch, which I'm willing to send to people, and carries events. There's elections going on in Belarusia at the moment. I mean, it's shocking that the leader of the opposition has to go into hiding because there's corruption, and the henchmen of the leader are sort of arresting her helpers. I mean, at least it hasn't got that bad in the UK yet. So everybody calm down, let's have democracy, let's play with a straight bat, as we say in English cricketing metaphors, and not cheat, I mean, I think the business of who's going to be leader, it's a cycle, As Druids, we used to appoint the kings and the leaders, and kings come and go, nobody has power forever. It shouldn't be like that. Each generation has their own people that come to the fore. The important thing is that they stand for truth, righteousness and justice, whoever's in power. And it's our job as Druids or intellectuals or philosophers, and the name varies, in ancient Athens you were called one thing, in Mecca you'd be called something else, in Delhi you'd be called something else, but there's always a class of intellectuals whose duty it is to inform, educate and inspire and sort of steer the political elites. And in turn the military elites. The military should never ever have power to launch wars and do, pogroms. I mean, the trouble with Hitlerism is a corporal took power of Germany, one of the great countries of Europe with a tremendous intellectual heritage, and a corporal took power. I mean, of course you're going to get trouble. The same in Russia when these Bolsheviks seized power. They were not equipped to steer a great nation into a peaceful future. All they did was launch war. So yeah, we have a big job, the World Intellectual Forum, and also our colleagues in Mauritius. We have a World Intellectual Forum coordinator there, Prema, and she is literally covered in oil, helping on the beaches to try and prevent this oil spill, making worse havoc on the ecology of the island of Mauritius, which is a beautiful paradise of coral reefs and so on, just off Africa in the Indian Ocean. And a Japanese trawler has gone down and spilling its oil. I mean, oh gosh, it never rains but it pours on this planet. This planet has got so many problems with it that it's just becoming slightly unmanageable. But fortunately, there's enough of us, the crew of good people in every country doing our thing. So good luck to Prema in Mauritius and all her fellows who are helping sort it. In the World Intellectual Forum newsletter, I published a set of principles for guidance. And if you agree with them, if you read them, if they're on our website as well, European World Intellectual Forum, if you look them up and agree with them, then you're welcome to join the World Intellectual Forum. But you've got to have like a brain that can comprehend what we're doing. It is for intellectuals, so if you think you qualify and have some evidence for that, then read the principles, understand them and endorse them, and email us, and we will count you as a member. We've just had a new member join from the UK, a wonderful man called Nicholas Hagar, who has written many, many books, and he's a real polymath, a poet, a playwright, a scholar, an English teacher. He was a friend of Sir George Trevelyan, like me, and he's been head of schools, and he's worked in the school sector and in academia, and he wrote a wonderful book called Universe and Light about the principle of light being a universal thing. And coincidentally, I'm in the middle of doing a recording on the Quran, as you know, and I'm working through the surah called Light and Nur, which is one of the great surahs of the Quran. I mean, they all are really, but that is got some very famous passages about light. And Nicholas has also used the Gospel of Thomas when Thomas is in private conversation with Jesus, and he goes up the mountain and Jesus shares with him some mysteries, and Thomas comes back to the other disciples and they all say, well, what did he say? What did he say? And Thomas said, I can't tell you actually, because if I tell you, you will pick up stones and throw them at me, and then fire will come out of those stones. it's one of those Gnostic sayings in the Gospel of Thomas that scholars don't fully understand. What does it mean? Nicholas Hagar tries to interpret it, and he wrote a whole book called The Fire and the Stones. What is that Gnostic fire that Thomas was talking about? Well, that's the question, we've all got to ask. That is the universal fire of wisdom, of true gnosis, of true akal, to use the Arabic term. And that's what we should be accessing, not the fire of nuclear bombs and nuclear radiation that we tragically commemorated recently in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I've just been speaking to the head of the International Peace Bureau, who are active trying to prevent, nuclear World War III. And we're having a big conference in Barcelona next year in 2021. Hopefully, inshallah, it'll be able to be there in person. And that's important, put it in your diary. I'm hoping to organise something for the World Intellectual Forum in Barcelona, a mini conference as part of the International Peace Bureau on the role of intellectuals in peace building and so on. So that's all what's happening there. That's very exciting. Now I come to the tragedy of Beirut. Golly gosh, where to begin? I mean, as if the world isn't in enough pain and suffering with COVID and everything, and then suddenly that huge explosion in Beirut. It is mind-boggling. So what caused it? Well, there are so many theories. I think what Aristotle would have called the material cause is a warehouse full of this ammonium nitrate, which is a sort of fertilizer thing that had been brought off a ship. Another cause is the ignorance of the people that have left it smouldering in its warehouse, knowing it's a huge fire risk. This is the stuff that has been used by bombers, and I think this is the stuff that blew up the Oklahoma building, for instance, and many other similar atrocities. And here it is sitting in a warehouse. So ignorance is another cause. Ignorance is from the word to ignore, and etymology is such a key to philosophical study of events. So the active cause of this is ignorance. Somebody was ignoring this warehouse full of stuff. Now there may have been also a trigger. I've looked at possible explanations whereby somebody, attacked something with some kind of trigger that then created a fire which then set off the ammonium nitrate, because these things don't just blow up randomly. There had to be some kind of trigger. So I think, again, it's incredibly important the Lebanese government and military and intelligence and all the rest of it do a thorough investigation of the cause. Unfortunately, sort of chaos is breaking out on the streets of Beirut. Protesters, civilians are fighting with the police and the military throwing stones, and I don't think that's the way to go myself. I think a bit of order is needed to actually get to the truth. But I understand, because people feel infuriated of the corruption, and I'm not living in Lebanon. I don't know enough about the politics of it all But I would say that the most important thing is to find the truth about the cause of the explosion. I know that President Macron from my country of France has just been there offering help to rebuild the port, and he's calling for an international investigation, because this has huge implications, and I hope France helps set that up. I hope it's done very carefully and very systematically and scientifically. What I would say most important is to not let happen what happened after 9/11, i.e. lorries take everything away, take all the evidence, no, seal the area, put a cordon around it, don't let a single brick or, lorry of dust leave until the investigation is complete. Because science can now tell what was the cause of the trigger of this fire. It seems to me that the riots in the streets are a diversion from the work that needs to be done, which is to find out what actually caused it. So, and anger isn't always the best thing to go for. Aristotle quite rightly said that any old fool can be angry. The point is to be angry for the right reason, at the right time, with the right person, and with the right effect. So I would say to the people of Lebanon, hold your anger. Do the forensic investigation of what happened. And citizens should be involved. Those people protesting in the square who want truth, they should be involved. They should be demanding that investigation. They should be sitting in on it to make sure that it's not a whitewash. And that the people actually responsible are found, are named, are jailed, and are, punished appropriately. Let's hope it was an accident. Obviously, it's a horrible thing to have to say, but let's hope it was an accident and that nobody deliberately triggered this off. If it turns out that and it would have to surely be some foreign intelligence agency from outside, God forbid who, I don't know, but someone wanting chaos and mayhem in Beirut. You can name a few possible suspects. Well, and I've read one report that, yes, Netanyahu ordered this, and some chap claims that he has evidence to that effect. Well, that's beyond scandalous. That is a war crime. And if it's true, and again, one never knows with these things, if it's true, then the people of Israel should demand to know that. Somebody in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, should be asking questions immediately, Did Netanyahu order this? Was this a sort of thought to be a good idea to attack Hezbollah? It's the sort of thing that Netanyahu might have done. It's got his sort of hallmarks. He's that ignorant and that stupid. And that's the kind of speech he gave to the UN when he was threatening to do this kind of thing. We'll attack Syria. We know where the weapons are kept. He's got this fanatical hatred of anything that isn't within his small world. So anything Shia, anything slightly, esoteric, Islamic, Syrian, Iranian, his thought world is actually quite limited. And I feel sorry for him, and I feel sorry for the Israeli people that they have to suffer with he's an anti-intellectual, and the whole movement that he represents, Likud, is an anti-intellectual movement. It originated in the terrorist gangs at the end of the British Mandate, when we were trying to get a peace deal for the whole of Palestine, which would satisfy everyone, the Arabs and the Israelis, and the Christians and all the rest. And their response was just to bomb and do Beirut type events, not on that scale, but King David Hotel type events, because their mentality was that by bombing we'll get the British out and we'll win quicker. Well, that's not ethical. That's not intelligent even. They also killed, the great Swedish mediator who was trying to resolve the whole situation, appointed by the UN, whose name escapes me, but you know who I mean. And so that's who we're dealing with Likud. And so their mentality is, yes, bomb. If there's a problem politically, just bomb your way out. So I'm not ruling out of order the possibility that Netanyahu might have ordered this, which is shocking. But these facts have to come out, and that's why I'm saying forensically seal the whole port, investigate it, let the people that are throwing stones at the police put the stones down and get on the investigation team. Let all the young PhD students at the University of Beirut who know about these material sciences get involved. Because if somebody was involved in causing this, then they really, really want riots in Beirut. They don't want investigations. And I suspend judgment on what may or may not have caused it. I will look forward to an investigation being conducted properly and forensically and scrupulously. I have friends in Beirut who fortunately are well, survived, but tens of thousands of people are now homeless. I mean, this is utterly scandalous. The people demonstrating against Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, coming out on the streets against his corruption charges and the fact that he's allowed to go on being Prime Minister, it is a most extraordinary situation. I mean, imagine Boris Johnson was actually in court for corruption. Let's say that some of his own crimes actually came out of the woodwork. I'm sure he has been involved in corruption, but he's skillfully managed to cover it all up. If it actually came that he was on, being charged in court, I mean, of course he shouldn't go on being Prime Minister. I mean, the thing is, both Israel and Britain have unwritten constitutions. We always assumed that people would play by sort of unwritten rules of fair play. And if you're, under suspicion of crime, you wouldn't go on being a cabinet minister or a prime minister. I mean, it's just incalculable. The trouble is that when we've moved into an age of post-morality, post-ethics, now it's just dog eat dog, the rich win, the powerful win. So those quaint notions of ethical duty and so on have just completely gone out the window. Now, at that point, we need a written constitution. Israel needs a written constitution limiting the power of a prime minister. And it would have clauses in, such as, if a prime minister comes up for trial, he has to step down. I think it happened a while ago with a president of Israel who was accused of sexual crimes and who did have to stand down and actually went to prison. He was found guilty. There was no question about that. He was, he stood down. Should happen to Netanyahu. Okay, so that's just, so I put all this into my newsletter. I'm just giving you a sort of verbal version. This is the oral version. Read the thing. And I've talked about the European Union Mediation Service. I've been in discussions with the International Peace Bureau about that and how we can advance that through the European Union. Because the European Union is a peace-loving body. We don't want wars breaking out either on our doorstep or anywhere in the world. And if we can get a professionally manned, properly qualified and trained European Union mediation service, we will try and put these wars out, wherever they're going on, particularly in the Mediterranean region, but anywhere in Africa, anywhere in Asia. I watched a horrendous documentary last night on Al Jazeera, which is a very good news channel. My nephew works for Al Jazeera occasionally. And it was a documentary about the Hmong people of Laos, who I vaguely heard of but didn't know their story. They're living in the jungle in a part of North Laos, and they've been for 30 years living in fear. They're living in total poverty. They have no support. They were on the wrong side in the Vietnam War. They supported the Americans, this particular tribe, so they've been abandoned. Nobody wants to know, and there's thousands of them living in the jungle. Like, all they live on is sort of the root of a plant. And the Laos army is trying to hunt them down and kill them all. And a documentary filmmaker made it into the jungle to one of their headquarters and interviewed them, and they were just crying. I've never seen a tribe full of tears, weeping. They called him father because they wanted him to come and rescue them. And it is the most moving film I've seen for a long time, most tragic. They pleaded with him to sort out their problems and present it to the UN. He did so, and the UN doesn't care, it's not doing anything. Well, this is where the European Union Mediation Service would come in. We do care as a continent, and if and when we get it running, it would immediately intervene. It would negotiate between the Laos soldiers, the government, and these poor tribal people, and we would find a solution. We would help develop their regions so that they can be self-sustaining, make a peace treaty whereby the Laos army don't attack them. It would be some autonomous Hmong region of Laos or whatever, and they in turn would give up their weapons, and a peacekeeping force would help, police the perimeters, whatever. It's not beyond human reason to sort out these problems. This has been going on for 30 years, and it was a legacy of the Vietnam War, because it was Americans that recruited this tribe and then abandoned them. Now, there's just one little example of why we need a European Union mediation service with actual professionals. I mean, I'm trained as a mediator, and it works. And every European Union country would have like a team of the five best mediators in its tradition. They'd all be qualified academics and experienced mediators. Completely neutral, their job would simply be to get peace. So let's say, God forbid, the sort of fighting starts